There is a kind of strength that does not speak loudly. It does not announce itself. It does not need attention. Most people never notice it, but once you feel it, you can never unsee it. This strength appears the moment you stop caring about things that weaken you, not in a dramatic way, not in a rebellious way, but quietly. You don't wake up one day and decide to change everything. You simply wake up and feel less need to explain yourself. You feel less need to react, less need to prove who you are. Something inside you becomes still. This stillness is not emptiness. It is power. The strongest people are often misunderstood because they do not perform their strength. They don't argue to win. They don't speak to dominate. They don't react to be seen. They choose silence when others choose noise, and this choice changes everything. Most people believe power comes from control. Control over others, control over outcomes, control over situations. But real power comes from self-regulation, from knowing what deserves your energy and what does not. When you care about everything, you are controlled by everything. Every opinion pulls you. Every reaction shapes you. You become predictable. And predictable people are easy to influence. Quiet power is the opposite. It comes from selectivity. You choose when to engage. You choose when to step back. You choose when to remain silent. And this choice is felt, even when nothing is said. Silence makes many people uncomfortable because silence does not give clues. It does not reveal intention. It does not explain emotion. So, people project their own thoughts onto it. They assume weakness. They assume distance. They assume indifference. But silence can also mean clarity. It can mean, I see what is happening, and I do not need to respond. This is the moment quiet power begins. When you stop caring about being perceived correctly, because perception is unstable. It changes with mood, context, and bias. Trying to manage perception is exhausting, and it never ends. One person understands you, another misunderstands you. You clarify, you explain. Still, something is lost in translation. So, you learn to let interpretation exist without chasing it. You realize that being understood by everyone is not a requirement for peace, and peace is a form of power. Quiet power does not come from emotional absence. It comes from emotional mastery. You still feel, but you don't leak. You don't spill your energy into every situation. You don't give your emotions away freely. You hold them, and what you hold gains weight. People who speak constantly often lose impact. People who react instantly lose authority. But those who pause carry presence. Presence is felt before words. You walk into a room and say nothing. Yet something changes. The pace slows. The tone shifts. Not because you demand it, but because you are not chasing it. This is the paradox. The less you try to control the room, the more the room adjusts. Quiet power is rooted in restraint, in not taking bait, in not correcting every false assumption, in not defending your identity. Because your identity is not fragile. Fragile things need protection. Stable things do not. When you stop caring about defending yourself, you free your attention. Attention returns to what matters. Your posture changes. Your voice slows. Your words become deliberate. You no longer rush to fill silence. You allow it to exist. And silence does something interesting. It invites reflection. It forces others to reveal themselves. People talk more around silence. They expose their insecurities, their agendas, their need for validation. And you observe. Observation is another form of power. You see patterns. You recognize who needs attention and who respects space, who pushes boundaries and who honors them. Quiet power comes from awareness, from knowing that you don't need to participate in everything. You don't need to react to provocation. You don't need to correct misunderstanding. Some battles resolve themselves when you don't show up, and some relationships reveal their limits when you stop carrying them. This is not detachment. This is discernment. You are not closing your heart. You are protecting your center. People often confuse loud confidence with strength, but loudness is usually compensation. It covers uncertainty. It fills space because silence feels threatening. Quiet power is comfortable in silence. It does not rush. It does not need approval. It does not chase agreement. It stands. And because it stands, others feel it. When you stop caring about being liked, your energy changes. You stop bending. You stop adjusting to emotional pressure. You become less available to manipulation, and manipulation relies on reaction. When there is no reaction, it has nowhere to land. This is why calm people are hard to control. They don't give feedback to emotional hooks. They don't reward drama with attention. They don't fuel conflict with explanation. They let things fall on the floor. Quiet power is not passive. It is strategic. It knows when engagement adds value and when it subtracts. It knows that attention is a currency, and it spends it carefully. You begin to notice how often people try to pull you into noise, arguments, opinions, emotional storms. Not because it matters, but because chaos seeks company. When you stop caring, you step out of that current. And suddenly, you are standing on solid ground. You don't need to announce boundaries. Your behavior becomes the boundary. Short answers. Calm tone. No emotional spikes. This alone reshapes dynamics. Some people respect it. Others resist it. Resistance is information. You don't need to correct it. You simply take note. Quiet power is not interested in convincing. Convincing is effort, and effort is wasted on those who are not ready to see. You let understanding find you. Those who are aligned will feel it. Those who are not will drift. This is not loss. This is refinement. Your world becomes quieter, not empty, but intentional. You speak less, but when you speak, people listen. Because your words are not diluted by constant output. You don't repeat yourself. You don't overjustify. You don't argue with closed minds. You choose clarity over volume. This is what happens when you stop caring about external validation. Your center strengthens. Your reactions slow. Your presence deepens. And others adjust unconsciously. They speak more carefully. They test less. They sense that you are not reactive. This is not fear-based respect. It is energetic respect. It comes from containment, from knowing that you are not easily shaken. Quiet power is built slowly, through moments where you choose restraint over reaction, through silence where you could have spoken, through calm where you could have exploded. Each time, your nervous system learns. It learns that safety does not come from control. It comes from steadiness. You become harder to disturb, not because you don't care, but because you care wisely. You stop caring about things that leak power, and you invest in things that build it. Depth, focus, integrity. Quiet power does not chase recognition. Recognition comes to it, not loudly, but consistently. This is the beginning of a different way of moving through the world. Not louder, but stronger. Not reactive, but rooted. In the next part, we will go deeper into how quiet power is built daily, through habits, through posture, through inner dialogue, and how caring less creates a presence that speaks even when you don't. I'll talk more about this in the full video. At first, quiet power feels unfamiliar because the world teaches us that strength must be visible, that confidence must be loud, that success must announce itself. But real power rarely does. It moves underneath the surface. Quiet power is the ability to remain steady when others rush. It is not hesitation. It is restraint. You don't speak just to be noticed. You speak when there is something worth saying. And because of that, your words land deeper. Quiet power grows when you stop proving, when you stop explaining yourself to people who are not listening. You realize that not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every challenge needs a response. Some things lose their power when you refuse to engage. This kind of strength does not come from control. It comes from self-trust. You know who you are. You know what matters. And that clarity allows you to stay calm, even in pressure. Quiet power is visible in how you pause before reacting, in how you listen longer than you speak, in how you choose your battles carefully. You don't rush to fill silence. Silence works for you. It gives you space to observe, to understand, to respond with intention. People often confuse quietness with weakness, but silence is not absence. It is presence without noise. When you develop quiet power, you stop seeking approval. You don't need applause to feel validated. You don't need constant feedback to move forward. Your direction comes from within. This makes you harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to shake. You become grounded. You move with fewer words but clearer actions. And over time, people notice. Not because you demand attention, but because your calm stands out. Quiet power is not about withdrawing. It is about choosing how much of yourself to give. You protect your energy. You protect your focus. You protect your peace. You understand that power leaks when you react emotionally to everything. So you slow down. You breathe. You allow moments to settle before you decide. This is not passivity. It is mastery. Mastery over impulse. Mastery over emotion. Mastery over attention. The louder the world becomes, the more valuable this kind of strength is. Because calm is rare, and what is rare becomes influential. Quiet power does not chase control. It creates gravity. People lean in. They listen. They feel something they can't quite explain. And that is where true influence begins. I'll go deeper into this in the full video. As quiet power deepens, it begins to shape how you move through everyday situations, especially when pressure appears, in meetings, in conversations, in moments where others rush to speak first. You don't compete for attention. You don't interrupt. You observe. You notice tone, body language, what is being said and what is being avoided. This awareness becomes your advantage. When you finally speak, you're not reacting. You're responding. And people feel the difference. Quiet power in communication is not about saying less. It is about saying what matters. You don't overload conversations with unnecessary words. You leave space. Space allows others to reveal themselves, their intentions, their insecurities, their priorities. You listen without preparing your next sentence. This kind of listening builds trust because people feel seen instead of managed. Quiet power also shows up in how you handle disagreement. You don't escalate. You don't personalize everything. You stay curious. You ask questions instead of defending positions. You let others speak until their arguments run out. Calm often outlasts force. In work environments, quiet power is rare. Many people believe they must appear busy to be valuable. They rush. They over-explain. They overpromise. You don't. You focus on clarity, on consistency, on doing the work without constant self-promotion. And over time, this creates credibility. People trust what doesn't feel desperate. You become known as someone who is steady, someone who doesn't panic, someone who doesn't collapse under pressure. Quiet power means you don't chase validation from authority. You respect structure, but you are not intimidated by it. You speak to anyone with the same grounded tone. No shrinking, no exaggeration. This balance makes you difficult to dismiss. In personal relationships, quiet power protects you. You don't argue just to win. You don't explain yourself to people who refuse to understand. You state your boundaries once, clearly, calmly, and then you follow through. You don't need drama to be taken seriously. Your consistency does the work. Quiet power teaches you when to stay and when to step away. Not every relationship deserves unlimited access. Not every conversation deserves your energy. You learn to disengage without resentment, without bitterness. You release the need to be right. You choose to be at peace. This changes how conflict feels. Conflict becomes information, not a threat. You are not afraid of tension. You don't rush to dissolve it. You allow it to exist until clarity emerges. And because you are calm, others often adjust their tone around you. Your nervous system sets the temperature. This is leadership without force, influence without control. Quiet power is not built overnight. It is trained through patience, through restraint, through repeated moments of choosing calm over impulse. And with each choice, your presence grows heavier, not louder, heavier. People feel it when you enter a room, not because you demand attention, but because you are centered. And centered people change the energy around them. I'll continue this in the full video. Quiet power reveals itself most clearly when things don't go as planned, when pressure increases, when uncertainty appears, when outcomes are unclear. This is where many people lose their center. They rush decisions. They seek reassurance. They react from fear. You don't. You slow down even more. You understand that urgency is often emotional, not practical. Quiet power does not mean you feel nothing. It means your emotions do not control your behavior. You allow yourself to feel uncertainty without rushing to escape it. This creates space for better decisions. In moments of crisis, you return to fundamentals. What do I know for sure? What can I control? What truly matters right now? You separate noise from signal. You don't crowd your mind with every opinion. You choose a smaller frame, a calmer lens. Quiet power is the ability to wait without freezing, to pause without panicking. You understand that clarity often arrives after stillness, not after speed. When others are emotionally loud, you stay regulated. Your voice remains steady. Your body remains grounded. This alone creates authority. People trust those who are calm when stakes are high. Not because calm means certainty, but because calm signals capacity. You can hold complexity. You can tolerate ambiguity. This makes you a natural anchor in unstable moments. Quiet power also changes how you approach risk. You don't chase bold moves for recognition. You don't avoid risk out of fear. You evaluate. You listen. You gather enough information and then you commit. Once you decide, you don't second guess every step. You move forward with quiet confidence, not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because you trust your process. In leadership moments, quiet power creates safety. People feel less reactive around you. They slow down. They think more clearly. Your calm regulates the room. This is influence that doesn't rely on dominance. It relies on presence. Quiet power also teaches you how to handle loss. When something ends, when plans collapse, when expectations fail, you don't dramatize. You don't deny. You acknowledge what is real. You grieve without collapsing. You adapt without bitterness. You extract meaning instead of blame. This ability to metabolize loss without hardening is rare, and it makes you resilient. You don't become cynical. You don't close yourself off. You become wiser, more precise, more selective. Quiet power is not about never breaking. It is about breaking cleanly, without chaos, without self-destruction. You rebuild with intention. You choose your next direction carefully. You don't rush to replace what was lost. You allow space for something new to emerge. And when it does, you recognize it. Because you are listening. Because you are not numb. Because your inner world is not crowded. This is why quiet power endures. It doesn't spike. It compounds. Over time, you become someone others look to when things are unclear. Not for answers, but for steadiness. And steadiness is a form of wisdom. I'll finish this in the full video. Over time, quiet power becomes a way of living, not a technique, not a strategy, a posture toward life. You no longer think in terms of dominance or submission. You move from alignment. You're not trying to control outcomes. You're shaping how you show up regardless of outcomes. This is freedom. Quiet power means you stop outsourcing your sense of worth. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. You listen to feedback without losing your center. You extract what is useful and release the rest. Your identity is not up for negotiation. You don't perform confidence. You embody it. And embodiment is quiet. It does not announce itself. It simply remains. As years pass, you notice something shift. You attract different kinds of people. Conversations become slower, deeper, more honest. You are no longer pulled into chaos as easily. Drama feels foreign, not tempting. You don't crave intensity, you crave clarity. Quiet power teaches you how to live with fewer regrets. You don't rush decisions you will have to carry. You don't say yes to paths that drain your future self. You choose long-term coherence over short-term validation. These changes the arc of your life. Small, calm decisions compound. They build a life that feels sustainable, not impressive from the outside, but deeply stable from the inside. Quiet power does not seek to be admired. It seeks to be true. And truth simplifies everything. You waste less energy on pretending. You conserve energy for creation, for learning, for relationships that feel mutual. Your nervous system becomes your compass. When something feels off, you listen. When something feels aligned, you move. You trust subtle signals. Because you have learned that loud emotions often lie, but quiet knowing rarely does. This way of living does not make you perfect. You still make mistakes. But you recover with less self-violence. You adjust without shame. You continue without abandoning yourself. Quiet power allows you to grow older without growing bitter, to gain clarity without losing softness, to become strong without becoming hard. And that balance is rare. In the end, quiet power is not about standing above others. It is about standing firmly within yourself. So that when the world pulls, pressures, and provokes, you remain centered, grounded, clear. This is not a loud life, but it is a deeply lived one. I'll talk more about this in the full video,